Welcome to the Arcane Mystic, your weekly sanctuary for health, well-being and spiritual exploration. Whether you're delving into the healing power of frequency medicines, uncovering hidden wisdom, or seeking a deeper connection on your journey back to self, this podcast is a guide to the mystical side of life. Join us each week as we explore ancient practices, modern techniques, and timeless truths that help you unlock your true potential. We bring together a community of like-minded souls who are passionate about spiritual growth and personal transformation. This podcast is about the soul's journey and the wisdom that lies within. So if you're ready to elevate your mind, body and spirit, subscribe to the Arcane Mystic today. Let's awaken the inner mystic and embark on a journey of discovery together. Remember, the journey to self is the most powerful journey of all. Welcome to this broadcast of the Arcane Mystic, where today we will be talking about Fortean, the paranormal, and extrasensory perceptions with the wonderful Sara Mondaini. Welcome, Sara. Lovely to connect with you again. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, I host a paranormal Fortean show with Thomas Sheridan over on my channel, and it's called Hocus Focus, where we discuss lots of interesting mysteries and we try to look at them from a different angle and a different point of view to the usual way that they're looked at in mystery and unexplained books.
Amazing.
And I have a website and I do some blogging, and I've just had my first book published, which is very exciting.
It's a very good book as well. It's a magical book, and we'll get into that in a moment. And the reason for Sara being on today is because I met Sara at Glastonbury at an event, was it last month?
Yes.
And we were with Thomas Sheridan. There was also others that had the podcast. I have another podcast, which is the Fae podcast, and I'll get the name up underneath this. And we ended up all talking about Fortean paranormal mysteries, and it was absolutely wonderful. And so Sara showed me a lot, or shared a lot of different things that she had been through. So coming back to the point, Sara, when was your first paranormal experience?
Oh gosh, when I was a little girl, I don't remember the first one. It's always been there. I remember having a imaginary friend when I was very, very young called Rupert, and he was a few inches tall and he had a beard and dungarees and trousers, and he would follow me around the house and sit on the tap every time somebody was going to turn the tap on. He was always there being mischievous. Um, I used to see, well, I saw ghosts and spirits as a young child. I would always go to my grandmother's house and there'd be somebody in there. And I'd say, who's that man? Who's that woman? I don't like that man sat on the bed. Who's that person over there crying? It's just always been there. And it was those early experiences that got me into unexplained mysteries, the Fortean, the paranormal, because luckily my parents didn't try to tell me that I was imagining things or don't be silly. They actually encouraged it because my dad's also quite sensitive. So I picked up a lot of things from him. I think it's a family thing. So they encouraged me to embrace my weirdness, which I did. And here I am.
Yeah, that's really interesting because not a lot of people have the opportunity to have parents that not drown that out, but just allow it to kind of be. And what I'm finding at the moment, I home educate my son, and I'm finding that a lot of these parents just allow things to be because they're not in a rush to do certain things or be a certain way. It's becoming more normalized now, as we know that since 2020, a lot of people are not following the old narrative as what they were before. And with not watching so much news or television and maybe reading more books and looking at things from a different perspective, a lot of them feel like they've been red pilled. And now they're experiencing, I would say, extrasensory perceptions. Now, with regards to what Sara said, this is a version of a person or somebody that has followed that all the way through. and experienced these things, had it normalized as being a part. The other thing that I was going to ask you that you've already answered as well is it a familial thing, which you have done? And does your dad still have experiences, or did he speak about experiences that he had when he was younger?
Yeah, my dad's been the same. He's had experiences since he can remember, and he still has them to this day. Yes, he still sees spirits. He's gone out into the woods and has lots of experiences in the woods round by our house as well, because I live quite close to my parents. So I do a lot of walking with my dad, and he's had lots of experiences out there in the woods where he's seen nature spirits and all kinds of things. Yeah.
What do you think the little person was when you were younger?
I just think he was somebody who came to just amuse me. I don't know. He was solid. I remember him being solid. He certainly wasn't see-through like you would expect a ghost to be see-through. He was solid. So I think he was something from another dimension. He could have been a nature spirit. He could have been some kind of a gnome or an elf because he had a long beard and he would wear funny trousers. They were like I remember dungarees. And he was quite mischievous. So I just think he was a mischievous little man who came to make me laugh and maybe not feel afraid of the dark and places like that, which you do when you're a child. And I
Yeah,
was an only child as well, so he may have come through for me as a companion as well.
that is really interesting. And my daughter had an imaginary friend as a child. And I remember once driving, we lived in Cambridge then, and she was like, yeah, her and her mama got in the car. Jahim, can you move up, please? Talking about my son. And I'm like, well, who let them in? And she said, I did. You couldn't argue with them. So, and I think it's great that what this is really showing people on a bigger level, I think that these are abilities that we've all had individually, some more so than others because they're able to tap into it. But with the decimation of like kind of village life, the tribe, nature, because the biodiversity is something that we would have clung on to. And it's interesting that you mentioned about the forest and going into walking into the woods and being able to pick things up there because nature is alive. Um, the trapping of water as well. I wrote an article about that for Substack on, how water really, since it's not been able to flow, it's lost its magical qualities. And it's almost a bit like humans as well, because at one point we had a flow where we were able to really be ourselves. And we've been given a narrative to believe in, and it's almost shut people off from those innate abilities. But you can take the people away from the village, but you cannot take the village out of the people. And these things are becoming more and more apparent. So, what would you say was the most scariest experience that you've ever had?
Um, it was actually one that was around 10 years ago, maybe 9, 10 years ago, when I woke up and saw a shadow person standing at the side of the bed, and he was about 7, 8 foot tall. He was as tall as the wardrobe, so however tall the wardrobe is, he was towering at the same level as the wardrobe, and he was solid, and he was dressed in like what you would imagine the Grim Reaper to be dressed in. He had the cowl, the long cloak, and he had the what do you call it? The scythe, the thing. Except it wasn't a scythe that you cut things with. It was more of a something to walk with, like what the hermit holds on to in the tarot card. And he was there and he was solid. And I looked at him and he was aware of me. And I actually kind of tried to ground myself, thinking, I'm not dreaming, I'm wide awake. I'm in the awake state here and he's not moving. He's still there. He's still there. And eventually the fear got the better of me. And I was actually quite shocked by this thing because I didn't want to see the eyes. I was afraid that he might lift his head and I would see into the cloak. So at that point I screamed out. And as I screamed out, I banged the light on. And when the light went on, he just dispersed. Now that really did frighten me because the first thought that I had was that the Grim Reaper? And if so, what does he want? What's he trying to tell me? And I made the stupidest mistake of, because I was awake, wide awake then, like wasn't going back to sleep, not a chance. I got the phone and I started having a look online, which was terrible, which was probably even more creepy, the things I was reading than what I just experienced. So I don't, that's as that I would put that to be as bad as having an ailment and then looking in the medical book. Just don't do that, because it's even worse with what people have to say. So I try to ground myself and get myself calm. Um, you know, if it was the Grim Reaper, what will be will be. There's nothing I can do about it. And thankfully, it wasn't anything to do with that. Nobody passed. There was nothing bad. So I think this thing was just there in the same space as me, perhaps at a different frequency. And I'd woken up and I tapped in, and maybe I wasn't supposed to see him, but I did. Maybe he was just there doing his own thing, and he might have wondered, who the bloody hell's that? When he looked at me, he might have wondered who I was, and he might be somewhere now talking on a podcast saying, I saw this really strange, pale-looking woman. And she was tiny. She was about 5 foot, and there she was. And I don't know where she came from. So I don't know. Perhaps he was in a different dimension,
It's
and we
really,
just
yeah.
crossed paths at that time.
The dimensional thing really does fascinate me again, because I've read a book by somebody called Malidoma Patrice Song. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's called Water and the Spirit.
No.
And it's about African ancestry. And I like reading things from different backgrounds because there's a lot going on here ancestrally. And within that, he says that at the age of around 13, or prepubescent ages in that African tribe, which was the Dagara tribe, there were three things that you had to learn. And it was like a rite of passage in order to be able to do that. So what this book is about really is about spirituality being stripped away from the people. And in that stripping away, what ended up happening is that we were given something to believe in. Now, maybe if there was at some point, I don't know whether your dad read you Myths and Legends, or whether you would have had stories as a child that would have showed you the scythe and the person carrying it, or the hermit. In certain traditions and cultures, they'd be able to link that back to somebody and know what it was. But over there was three things that you had to learn, and one of them was how to be able to see. And in order to be able to see, you had to be able to focus your thoughts and your eyes on the same thing. Because if your mind was in one place and your eyes were somewhere else, you won't be able to see what was going on around you. The other thing that they were taught how to do was to destabilize the body so that it didn't live in just one realm. So it was all about being able to move around, and understand that there was different realms of existence, so interdimensional. And the other thing that they would need to learn is how to travel interdimensionally and be able to return again. And I don't think that this would have just been pigeonholed to Africa. I think that this is probably something that everybody all over the world would have known how to do, and would have taught their children how to do at a certain point. But for some reason, that bit's been cut off, and now we've got Holy Communion, the children that are within certain religions and all the rest of it. So it makes me wonder if whatever it is that's here, because there's definitely something here that is not great on an energetic level that's trying to lead us all one way. Is it interdimensional? Is that why it's cut us off from that part of ourselves?
Yeah. Is it interdimensional, or is it an intelligence
Yeah,
that's come here from somewhere, I don't know, from the cosmic consciousness or from the universal consciousness, that is an I don't know if it's the entity is the right word, is an intelligence that kind of gets stronger and manifests itself by becoming like a mind virus in certain people who are susceptible to it. So it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger the more people that it manages to infect. Or is it an actual entity that's here, or entities that come through in and out through portals? I really don't know what it is, but there is something here, and we are in the midst of a spiritual battle
yeah,
against good and evil. As cliche as that sounds, there's no denying it now. We are.
yeah. And it is like a frequency. You can almost feel it. It's got some kind of intelligence that sits there. Now, what isn't really interesting about these different cultures and tribes that still hold on to these ways, they're still being taught how to tune into that. The Dogon tribe is another one that still they do that. And I'm sure, like I said, there's just tribes everywhere. But what I find fascinating is that we haven't been born into that environment. I know I certainly wasn't. And my parents were Windrush. They came over in the Windrush, and they came over with the god that was given to them, which was not their ancestral gods, to live with people who also had a god that was given to them, which was not their ancestral god. And growing up, you don't question anything because everybody's doing the same thing. But yet I couldn't accept that what was given to me as gospel. And I still found a pathway to almost end up back where you are at the moment as well, to think that there's something more out there that we can tap into. We've just found our different ways of doing it. And I find it really incredible that a lot of people have been able to do this. It's almost like that divine intelligence within that sits out there as well. Because yes, there's the darkness, but there's also the light. It's still shining through people in times of crisis.
Absolutely. And I also find it amazing how a lot of those people, like myself and yourself, we've all come together somehow. Like that table in Glastonbury that we were all sat at in the pub, that was a perfect illustration of how we all came together. And we were all from different parts of the country. There's people from different parts of the world. We've all managed to come together online.
Mm-hmm.
And just try and spread some light and some creativity and to try and help people just try and navigate through these strange times.
And it was interesting when it's Katie and it's what she was talking about and going into an old property where you've got these things that hold a kind of psychic charge. And she could really feel the energies of these items. And in your book, Hocus Focus, you speak about areas that hold psychic frequencies and hold certain energies that are still there and hold a psychic charge. And yes, some of them have been desecrated, but there's also ones that haven't been that people can still tune into. And what I love about this book is that it talks about so many different topics. Um, it's the weird and the wonderful. It's where people can really go into that and think, oh my goodness, I resonate with that. Or, I've read something along those lines, or something like that's happened to me. And it awakens, as it says in the book, something within you that allows you to tap into something bigger than oneself.
Yeah. And I think that's something has always been there in all of us, but it's been switched off through programming, brainwashing, TV, media, fear of ridicule, conforming, peer pressure, um, all kinds of things. And I think that, like you say, that book, well, that book was written with the intention of just trying to switch that back on in those people that are willing to just look a little bit beyond the surface of everything that's going on around, and even hoaxes and things that have been proved to be hoaxes. They were a hoax for a reason. Why? What encouraged something to be a hoax? There must be something behind that. There must be some thinking behind that. So we look at everything in that book.
Yeah. And it does really awaken something within. And I want more now. This is what you've done. I've read this and it's just like it's just incredible. And there's so much that people can add in the sense of just having simple conversations with other people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way. Writing that book awakened myself as well, something in myself, and you can't shut me up now. I don't know. I don't recognize myself some days. I'm definitely a different person to who I was pre 2020. Um, Doing
Mm.
Hocus Focus, the show, and writing that book has changed me completely as a person, much more brave now, much more courage to talk about these things. Because prior to that, I don't know about yourself, before we all came together and started doing our stuff on our relevant channels on YouTube, we've always had these experiences and know yourself. You're quite sensitive to spirit and you're a psychic and things like that. It's very difficult to just talk about that with people that are close-minded. So I tended in the past not to bring it up with people that I knew wouldn't get it. But now, if you get it or you don't get it, I'll still talk about it now. I have no fear about talking about it. I have no fear of ridicule anymore. and that brings with it a completely new freedom. And
Does.
the more you speak about these things and you speak your truth, if you like, the more people kind of come to you, and you meet more people that are on the same frequency as you, the same level as you, and this online community of people is just growing and growing and growing. And I think it's wonderful. It's an absolutely beautiful thing.
You know what I love about it? They're all weird. Every single one of them. And there'll be one that bakes wonderful things. There'll be one that'll be knitting, one does rune readings, another one does astrologer. And these are all the things that they say that really are pseudo or, are a bit strange. And here they are on the table from these people that are just colourful. They're fun to talk to. They've got sense of humour. They're charismatic. And I go online now when I go onto Facebook, and I feel really happy because even if there's moments where I don't feel 100%, somebody always creates something really beautiful and it brings you back to the present moment, which is right now.
They are the friends that you could only dream about in school.
Yeah.
When you're in school and you're hiding your light under a bushel because you don't want to draw attention to the fact that you can see spirit, or that you're aware of things that are coming down the road before they come, or you have imaginary conversations with a little man that sits on the tap called Rupert, like myself. um, you don't want to draw attention to that at school, because mainstream school was hard enough as it was without putting a Belisha beacon on your head and saying, come and bully me. So they were like the friends that you imagined having. They were the people that you had imaginary conversations with in your head. These are the people that when you were in your bedroom alone, that you wished that you knew. So you imagined it. And I wondered, all that imagination and all that wishing and wanting to meet people like that, did we bring that into manifestation at the right time? Because this is the right time.
It's the right time. And
Yeah.
it feels like it's time, like something big is happening at the moment. There's a lot of magic in the world. And I remember reading a book by Terry Brooks. I can't remember which one it was. I was thinking about it earlier. And in the book, there was a group of people just like us that were different and good at different things that they know. And he asks the wizard in that book, did I find magic? Or did the magic find me? How did it want to express itself? Did it, which way did it choose to go? And I'll just leave that conundrum out there because everybody, I believe, has got their own magic. They've got their own message. They've got their own way of working. Um, I think that in order to untap that part, it is within the creativity. I think being scared to talk about the weird is blocking more weird coming out in the world where lots of other people will speak about it. Because it's nice that the group that or the tribe that we're a part of, we speak about it as if it's just completely normal, just like everybody else talks about kind of TV shows that have no meaning and all the rest of it. And it continues to awaken something. I remember when I first was aware that I had abilities, I was quite young as well. And I got really red pilled at 18 when I watched something on the music industry and it completely shattered my psyche. And it was terrifying because, to be honest with you, I'd grown up in this kind of bubble that thought that everything that was on the TV or told by the news or whatever else was real. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing something that completely shatters that belief. And it was the most scariest thing that I've ever been through. So there's that part of the fear of the growth. Then there's kind of making peace with it. And in any moments of fear that you've had in your life, I'd like to share bits about what I do. But what do you do if you ever have a moment where you feel uncentered, unbalanced, a bit scared or ungrounded? What kind of techniques, so you don't have to give too much away, but just different bits that people can use to really help them to feel a lot more centered again?
Well, first of all, I think about what we can see. So if I'm being pulled one way or another way, I think about this reality that we're in. We only see on the electromagnetic spectrum, we only see in invisible light, not invisible light, but invisible light, we only see, is it 0.001%, something minute like that?
Tiny. Yeah.
So what is it, all these things that we can't see? So I was reading a book recently, and it was talking about how neutrinos which are tiny little energy particles. We get 100 trillion of those things passing through our body every second. So that just gives you an idea of how much we can't see. So if I'm feeling uncentered, afraid, I just think about the guidance and the ancestors and the spirit and the things around me, even things that I don't know exist, are there. I can't see them, but they're there, and they've seen me right up until this point. They've put me on the right path when I wandered off the right path, because I've wandered off the path a few times and gone down a few silly rabbit holes, and always found my way back. So I just trust that I'm going to be okay, that there's forces and spirit and things that I can't see that have got my back. And that just brings me straight back to my body, and I'm all right.
See, I work with the ancestors as well. I also have a safe place within my heart. And the safe place could be happy thoughts of happy times or just numinous moments. And whenever I feel unbalanced or uncentered, I always bring myself back to that place. And once I do that, I'm not feeding something that's looking a little bit peckish. Because I just think that when we give off energies that we don't want to feel in those moments, something's feeding off of that vibration. Because energy is literally currency, isn't it? So definitely with regards to that, with what you said, again, is just another modality of working with oneself. And we've shared two of our ways of maybe working with things. The question is, what's yours? And it's bringing it back to being an individual and working with one's own energy. I also feel as well that when there's situations that evoke fear within a person, I use that as a doorway to find out what the weaknesses are within my field. So if there's a feeling that I feel that doesn't feel that great, if it's, for instance, I don't know, fear of sadness or rejection or something like that, I make peace with that feeling so that it doesn't keep poking me and that something can't get through the back door when I'm not looking and that I can always stay in alignment. So that's another way or another thing that maybe one can use it for. And also, as well, do you have practices that maybe you do in the morning or that you do you wake up and maybe do certain things to get yourself into alignment for the day? Or are you a kind of get up and go person?
That depends on how much I've got to do or if I've overslept or not. I will be honest with you. But if it's a nice, easy day, then yes, I do. I get up and I will go down and have a cup of coffee or a hot drink and sit and think, almost to the point of putting myself in an alpha state, about what needs to be done today and how I'm not going to allow things or people to make me doubt myself, even my own self-doubt talk. I won't allow. I tell myself that I won't allow that to come through, and I'm just going to keep going forward and do what I have to do today. And if I have to go out into the big bad world and go along normal people and be all peoply, I usually give myself a bit of a talk as well to just focus and be
Do that
nice.
one. So, Sarah, you have to go out today. Right. Ground yourself. Do you do those ones?
I do that. I do a few exercises. I go to the supermarket. I have a coat of mirrors that I put on,
Mm.
so that if anybody is giving you the side eye or anything like that, or it's going to go back to them, and all these things, people think, oh, that's not real. It's all in your imagination, or it's all in your head, but it's not. It's a lot of magic, and a lot of spiritual work is done in the mind, in the imagination, because that's where you go into the alpha state, into other realities, into other realms, and you tap into other consciousness. So a lot of this work isn't done in the physical, it's done in the mind through meditation. So yes, people might think, how do you put a coat of mirrors on? But you sit and meditate on that, and with the intention of having that protection around you, you're going to go out there with it on. Maybe not physically, but you're going to be there and you're going to have that around you and you're going to be good to go and nothing's going to penetrate you because you've strengthened your psychic firewall. So you're ready to take on anything. And it's basically your She-Ra. Do you remember the cartoon She-Ra? I think she had the bracelets on and she would.
Great body for a cartoon, but yeah, I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
So that's really, really interesting. This morning, I woke up and I had quite an intense dream. Couldn't remember this one now, and I'm okay with that. It will come back to me as and when I need it. So the first thing I thought is, where do I feel any kind of discrepancies within my energy field or body? And I've got tuning forks beside my bed, and if I feel not 100%, I do a little bit of tuning work. Then I do maybe some gratitude work. So I've got, a gratitude journal. I've got a dream diary as well, an old leather looking thing. And then I have to move my body. I don't get to do this every day, but I move my body and I burn some incense, work with the ancestors um, within my home space and just clear the energy, work with water. These are just some of the things that I may do. I can't do them, like I said, all the time, every single day. But when I don't work within a practice, I really, really feel it. And I start feeling really kind of sucked back into that angry material world. And I don't feel a balance between the spiritual and the material. And then I will maybe do some flower essences or homeopathy just to bring me back to center. Because if I'm not grounded, I don't like the version of myself that I exhibit. So it takes quite a lot of work to just stay in alignment, I would say.
Yeah, I'm the same. I do get pulled and sucked back into the noise, and I might be out of character, and I look back and I think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that, or oh, I'm feeling like this, and I don't want to feel like this. But I think it's also good in a way to
Mm.
just experience that now and again because it reminds you of where you need to be. And I think if we was always in the right place and giving off the right energy and being nice to everybody all the time, that's when people take advantage. So I think it's good to show a little bit of your wild side sometimes and let people know that you are a force to be reckoned with if necessary. So
You
long as you
can't,
don't live there.
no, you can't be nice all the time.
No,
Like, the
no.
boundaries are so important. Like you said, the psychic firewall. And there's people that you can be yourself completely around, but you've got to really be careful of how you spend your energy, really. And it's about investing it wisely. And I don't spend a lot of time around lots of different people. So when I do get myself into alignment, it may be with people that I work with, or it's simply for myself, and then having some kind of online etiquette, because a lot of people don't seem to have that recently. There's a lot going on online that's a little bit strange, with just the way that people are behaving. So let me just go down here with regards. The other thing as well, we're going back to forests and frequency. And being in a forest or going out into nature allows you to tap into the kind of Schumann resonance, which overlaps with the alpha and the theta state within the body. And it's something that I would highly recommend. How often do you normally spend in these kind of areas?
If I go out for a walk, I'm out there all day. So it would be a weekend, Saturday. I can go out there with meet my dad at 10 o'clock and we can rock back up at 6 o'clock in the evening. And he's got to explain to my mother where he's been. And I'm home. I come home and um, very chilled out, very grounded, very recharged, I would say, and very positive. Just being out there, it really does blow the cobwebs away, even on a physical level, not just on a spiritual level. I love being out there. I love being in the green. I love being around trees. I love exploring new places like that. And I like to think that the nature spirits and the sprites and everything, as long as I'm respectful of them, they're going to see that I'm all right as well.
Yeah, and it is, and all ancient cultures would have had their nature spirits as well. And these are things that you can work with. Um, and just you can feel them, the water spirits, the nymphs, the dryads, hamadryads. There's loads of different things that people can work with there. Another thing as well, just quickly going back, I'm going to mention another book that I found really fascinating that really helped me to kind of understand the nature of life, so to speak. And that was The Active Side of Infinity by Carlos Castaneda. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, but I've not read that.
It's a good book.
Right.
Teaches you about the light and kind of the dark side as well of things. But the reason why I brought this book up is because of recapitulation. And for those of you that are really trying to tune into that spiritual side or don't quite know where a starting point is to be, the recapitulation is writing down all of the numinous moments in your life. So it's all those moments where you felt either the Fortean or the paranormal and the way that it made you feel. Because he says that if you do a timeline of that and then you look back at it, you start to see a bigger picture of things. And just because you're focusing on it enables you to almost build awareness of that it was always there. You just didn't choose to look there. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah.
really, really good. Um, and then thinking about this, are there any kind of warning signs that you want to give to people that are working with this part of themselves?
Yes, beware of charlatans. There's a
Yeah.
lot of charlatans out there. Beware of the new age rabbit holes. Don't fall. I mean, it is a rite of passage. I've been there. I know you have yourself. You don't stay there. You kind of have to go through it to get where to get where we are now. I'm not going to bash the new age community, but just be careful is all I'm going to say. Um, and just don't dabble in things that you don't fully understand because
Mm,
magic is real. Supernatural, we call it supernatural, but it is actually natural. It's just that we don't understand it, or science hasn't been able to um, rationalize it or prove it in a laboratory. So we call it the supernatural, but it is actually nature. I prefer to call it supernature, like you have a super consciousness. So just be careful what you're dabbling in. And if you're new to it, just take your time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So learn about things. Maybe do what you said, keep a journal of all your past experiences or all your experiences that you have from here on in. So you can get to learn about yourself a bit more and see what it is that you're experiencing. And also, don't expect it to be like what they portray in Hollywood movies because it's very subtle as well. It's
um,
very, very subtle. It doesn't come in with bells and whistles. And if you have a psychic insight, you know, it's very, very subtle. So you have to listen. So to your inner voice or your inner eye, if you like, your mind's eye. So there's lots of meditation and lots of relaxing and just bringing quietness around yourself. It's a long process, and also it's not all positive and love and light, fluffy unicorns and rainbows. There's also a lot of shadow work to do, so you get to see sides of yourself that you maybe not comfortable with, but you have to accept that, embrace that, work on it, constantly work on yourself all the time, and
yeah.
just keep your psychic firewall strong, because I know people that whose psychic firewalls are like a cat flap. It just like that, it's blowing in the wind. That's very, very dangerous. You're going to be spaced out, ungrounded, and we might be spiritual beings having a human experience, but we also, this is our home for now. This is where we are. So, it's important to keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah, it's that is really, really sound advice. And going back to the New Age cages, I spoke about different areas that could be found in my book, The Road to Sovereignty. I would also say that don't expect to have the same experiences as other people. Listen to your kids as well. For people that have got children out there, if they're having dreams or they're talking about the weird and wonderful, listen to what they've got to say. Up until a certain age, they come out with some wonderful, wonderful statements that will really blow you away if you listen to what they say. Another thing that's really good is look at myths and legends from your ancestral lineage, because I think that reading things from where you came from really awakens something from within you. And I remember reading a book. It was The Golden Ass. I know it, Metamorphoses by Pelias. And I read that book and I looked at it from a medicine perspective or from a herbal. Somebody else read that book and they started talking about the stones. And I was like, well, how did he get that? And how did I get that? It's because our ancestral messages are different. So it's really interesting just reading old books. Also, as well, books like Hocus Focus are really, really good because it comes from different perspectives. Um, the books that I mentioned here as well, it's also finding out what your ways of working with yourself are. Everybody's different. We're not all going to work the same way. Some might be really psychic, others might be really good with music, some might be really good with food. And it's learning to trust yourself in a time where we're being taught to trust anything but who we are. And then when you meet the others, enjoy it, enjoy it, and talk about, the magical. Let's make this a thing where it's just normal.
And the others will come if you follow your path and you follow your ancestral path and you are true to yourself and true to your heart. It might seem like they're not coming, but eventually the others will come and people will find you, and all of a sudden it's just illuminated and life is wonderful despite what's going on in the world. There's still magic.
Yeah,
And I've never felt so positive in all my life as what I do now when I'm surrounded by the people that have come into my life and into my circle now just through doing this work. And we're in some we are in literally in the breakdown of reality. But for myself, and I'm sure for yourself too, life's fantastic. It's never been more magical. It's
yeah,
never been more productive. It's never been more exciting.
yeah. Get back into your creativity. That's another thing as well. I always find that so many people say, oh, I can't meditate. Maybe you're not meant to. Maybe your meditation is in artwork or it's going for a walk or in photography because then you really switch off. So if you find that you can't do things in the way that people say that you should, then find your way because there's no perfect way, just yours.
Reason. And a lot of people think that meditation is just about sitting at the top of a mountain, spouting off om for hours and emptying your mind. And it's not. You can go and take a shower and you could be in there for 30 minutes and think you've only been in there 5 minutes because you've gone into the alpha state and you've daydreamed. Daydreaming is a form of meditation, if you like. Um, Doing something that you love so that you're not aware of your surroundings, that's a meditation. So it's not just about sitting there cross-legged and trying to empty your mind of all thoughts. I wouldn't recommend that anyway, because that could leave you open to all kinds of walk-ins or psychic attacks. So I wouldn't recommend emptying your mind. Just let thoughts come and go.
Yeah. And the spiritual journey is you try different ways and they will either work or they will not. Going back to water, I find that with water, if I have a shower or a bath, I ask for the magical properties of the water to be awakened and then to awaken the magical properties of water within me. Just little things like that, just things that you can say or that you can work with. And there's so much. So if you've got ways that you work that really works for you that maybe you feel that can benefit others, put it underneath in the comments so that we can build something that really helps lots of different people and share this with those that are feeling unable to share their truth or unable to speak about the weird and wonderful. And just so that you know that actually it's okay, you're accepted and you're loved, just for being who you are. And all of us will have different pathways of how we get there. Some would have gone through art, music, science, medicine. It doesn't really matter your pathway. Um, we've just ended up being part of a tribe and the magic's welcome.
Yeah, it is true. It is truly magical when I look back over the last 4 years, where we came from and where we are now and how it happened and how it's growing. And even more so when I went to Glastonbury. I've never been to Glastonbury before, but
You're look
I fell in love with the place. Now, I know I know it's very important. You've got to keep yourself grounded there, or you can get swept away with everything and you could, part with a lot of money because there's a lot of things there that,
hmm
to spend money on and things like that. But when I got home, I felt like something magical had happened. I felt something magical had happened on the first night when we all met for a meal in the pub. And I still think that something magical happened.
Yeah,
That was a week. I think it was like when we were there, nothing else in the world existed except that village, us in that village. And when I've come now, I'm back and back in the real world. I'm really feeling productive and positive and raring to go. Lots of new things in the pipeline. So Yeah. I can't explain how magic works, but then I've said before, when you make a cup of tea and you put the kettle on, you don't know how the kettle works. It just heats up the water and you have a cup of tea and you enjoy it. I don't need to know how magic works. I just know that it works for me.
It does, yeah, and just keep on working with it. And that place has a psychic charge that is unbelievable. The building that we were in the next day had held a psychic charge as well. It was the people just being in that moment. There was fairies everywhere. It was, wasn't there? And the podcast, is it Hair of the Hawthorn
Hmm.
or the Fae? It's that one. That one's got really good Fae stuff. And also as well, for those that are looking for stories or just an area to meet maybe others of like mind, Hocus Focus. There's one that just came out over the weekend, absolutely wonderful. You've just also done a podcast as well with Abby Wynn, and that
Yeah.
one again was for healers and working with different people. So there's so much available for all different sorts of people, regardless of what your focus is, that is in this kind of paradigm of the supernatural or the anti-mundane. So have a look. And what I'll do is I'll leave some links below for you all. Sarah, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed that chat with you. You've got such a great energy, really grounding and fun. And thank you for a wonderful evening that night. And for anybody out there, meet all of the others where possible. And it's a really good time as well because it's Samhain right now, isn't it? It's all like getting colder and letting things go. Well done on writing your book, Hocus Focus, and this is available on Lulu. And you will also be doing your own kind of podcast as well, and that is called
It's the Caffeine Chronicles. I did start it last year, and then with one thing and another, it kind of got a few episodes out there and it kind of got put on the back burner, but I'm going to revive that. So I've got some very interesting guests that in the pipeline for that.
Amazing, 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 amazing. And once again, thank you. And from this episode of the Arcane Mystic, thank you to Return MK, and I will be seeing you soon again. Take care.